Hello and welcome. I am so excited to be here today with one of my very dearest friends, Kimberly Hardey, and she is a licensed marriage and family therapist in Elk Grove, California, and she is a mother of two and an incredible coach and works with parents on emotion coaching. Kimberly, I've been looking forward to this forever. And so I'm so excited to have you here with me today. Tell us what got you into doing the type of work that you do, and tell us a little bit more what you mean by like emotion coaching, because I think it's really important. And I don't know that everyone understands what that means.
It's a new sort of term. When I first became licensed, I wish I had this when we were working in community mental health. This would have been so helpful. The kids were really stressed, were out of control. And I had parents who were kind of sitting just like heaps of shame on my couch. Mm-hmm. And I started to realize that if I was going to really empower a parent to be able to implement the changes that they needed to make with their child, I was going to have to build that parent up and empower mm-hmm. them. And really, and the way that I structure my practice is that I am just a member of the team. The parent is the team leader. And what I found was that these parents were really practicing their parenting from a place of shame and fear. They felt shame that their child was misbehaving. They felt shame that when they would reach out, people would point out all the things that they were doing wrong.
People are really good at doing that.
Yes. I mean, there is probably nothing in our country that we're just openly shaming of other parents. So if the child is wetting the bed, if the child is sleeping in the parent's bed, if the teenager is out drinking, if the teenager is depressed, that somehow that all falls on the parent, they have to own it all, and they are terrible, awful people. And, initially I kind of thought, well, maybe I'm just kind of really sensitive to it, and so it's an exaggeration. But I've been doing this now for quite a while, and it is across the board. And I wasn't just seeing that with my friends. You and I, we try to do something once a month, and, it didn't matter who it was from, but there was always some sort of shame somewhere. And so what I found is that when I would talk to parents, well, the first thing I started doing is I started talking to them about their sleep, because people who don't have a lot of sleep are not doing well. Like, how much sleep are you getting? I started looking at things like, who's in your support system? And it's not going to say, I told you so. It's actually also somebody who can check their own beliefs at the door and just sit with you in the space of, really hard right now. Not the person who says, well, you shouldn't have done that. You let them do X, Y, and Z. So now that's why that's happening.
Even the people that say, well, we did it like this and we didn't have any issues with that. Okay. We did it this way and it turned out perfect. Or
most of this stuff generally comes from a place of love, and it comes from a place of emotions. I think, though, that if we can evolve as a society to have higher emotional intelligence, we can actually shift the people who are in our lives, who we go to for help. If we work together to increase our emotional IQ, then the interactions that we have are going to be different. I say emotional IQ because that's the term that's being used, but it sounds real fancy, and it really isn't. I looked at the definition of emotional intelligence. So emotional intelligence, this is just straight off Wikipedia, is the ability to perceive, use, understand, and manage emotions. That's it. The ability to perceive, use, understand, and manage emotions. And where the struggle is coming is that we oftentimes react to an emotion. We react to our emotions, our friends' emotions. We react to our kids' emotions. We react to the emotions of the person that cut us off in traffic, or that we accidentally cut off in traffic, and now that person is angry with us. So if we're reacting to the emotion, we're not necessarily creating a connection, because reaction to an emotion or to a behavior isn't acknowledging that someone might be really struggling right now, or that someone's really doing really well right now. So this idea of emotional intelligence in some of the strategies that I use with parents is, let's take a step back and look at, why do you think that child is exhibiting that behavior? What's happening? And when we can look at it from that perspective, we can say, oh, they haven't eaten, tired, before we got on, we were just talking about, how after a certain time of day, it's like major stuff is not the greatest, right? Like I hated homework. I would be so sad when my kids would come home with homework. But I remember saying to them, after I had worked all day, after my husband had worked all day, I remember saying to them, after 8:30 p.m., I can't do homework. So don't come to me with your next day's homework at 8:30 p.m. You need to come to me for help and assistance at around 6 or 7 p.m. Mm-hmm. And granted, if we're working on something that is taking us past 8:30 p.m., but I really had to create on that because really my brain was not in good shape. And I knew that we were going to go from talking about math to having an argument because I was going to be really my fuse was going to be short. Why can't you understand this? Why can't you get this? We can kind of look at that in our kids. And if we all think about the fact that their nervous systems and they're immature, they're not going to have the ability to push through the way that adults can. And it's important to understand that at various ages. So creating emotional intelligence is really going from addressing a behavior to addressing an emotion that is causing the behavior. Now, I would say, you might have to address the behavior if someone is running with the scissors or, jump out your second story window into the pool.
Right.
The dangerous things. If you can kind of ignore the behavior and address the emotion, it changes everything exponentially.
Do you have tips on how to do that? How do you tune into their emotion when you're feeling not in check, maybe yourself as well?
So when we have compassion fatigue, right? Because we've been taking care of people all day, and then, oh my gosh, it's like, oh, I do not have it for my kids or for my family. So some strategies are to model this for our kids. So, reasons why emotional intelligence is really important is that it's modeling for kids how for them to take care of themselves.
Yes, 100%.
I can remember there would be times I was really lucky when my kids were really little, the way that my husband and my work schedule, I kind of did the morning thing. He went to work early and then if he got off earlier, he picked them up from school. And so usually by the time I got home, there was a lot of stuff done. But not everybody has that. I love Brene Brown. And she talks about a family gap plan, which I love, is having a family gap plan where you kind of sit everybody down and you say, okay, everybody, like here's what our schedule looks like for tomorrow. Like, wow, this is going to be a lot. Okay, so where can we all help each other out? Can someone make sure that they feed the dog? Can someone make sure that they empty the dishwasher, fold the laundry? Who's going to be cooking dinner? Who's going to be helping with homework? Who's going to be doing showers? And really kind of setting the stage with your kids around what do they want to see from their family. And it's one of the where once it's kind of discussed and talked about, then what happens with kids is then it's just gelled in their brain. And you kind of talk about it from the team perspective. Okay, is everybody on the team? Okay, we're on the team. Okay, we know what everybody's doing. Okay, because, we're going to be tired. The other piece is don't feel like you have to do all of it at once, right? So if you're going to have a really, really stressful day, then maybe that's a crock pot meal. Maybe that's a leftovers meal. Maybe that's a takeout meal.
Maybe open the box of cereal meal.
Yes, or fend for yourself. Like you guys can get whatever you want as long as it hits, this many food groups or whatever. And I think that that's good for our kids to see. We don't have to create this whole, facade that we have it all together all the time and it's perfect. Kids actually are very resilient and they understand when we're struggling and they like to be part of the solution. Try to cut yourself some slack. And if you're getting stressed out by something, I think what you have to look at is someone going to die if this doesn't happen? So, and so maybe we have to change up the strategy. I remember when I was getting ready to go back to work full time. So I was very fortunate and then I was able to work part time for a lot of my kids' lives. And I was getting ready to go back full time. And I came up with this very elaborate, I should have brought it because I think I still have one. I had this chore chart, right? And it had all these grids. And then I bought stickers. And there were stickers that were going to be given out in 15-minute increments from the time that they got home until the time that they went to bed. And it was coded by, difficulty of chore and all this stuff. Okay, now, tomorrow we are starting the chore chart. And he took one look at that and he goes, I hope you're going to be home to implement that, because right now I am not implementing.
What are we can take off our plate? Like doing hard things like that. There's some things I feel like we think we have to do that we don't have to do. I remember talking to this parent one time, and she was so upset that she'd be too tired to read to her child at night, and somehow she was failing as a parent. And kind of find out, it's like, well, you were reading like all day. What's the rule out there that says you also have to read when they're going to bed? If they're too tired, you're too tired, you don't have to do it then. Like, let's look at what we are doing, because we're doing so much throughout the day, and not focus on all the things that these rules we put in place for ourselves that are not realistic a lot of times, or not sustainable, or not really maybe important, and maybe in this phase of your life it's not a priority either.
Exactly. And I think, social media has not helped this cause, right? Because I think that what social media has done is it's caused us to do this whole comparison game where we're constantly ourselves to other people. And I think that our definition of what a good parent is really skewed. Kids need us to be the perfect parents. They just need us to be their parents. In addition to, what can you let go of and either sub out or just eliminate altogether? Also, that interrupts your ability to just embrace who your child is. That it's not necessarily about the perfect child. It's not the perfect child or the perfect parent, because that doesn't exist. And here's the thing. At the end of the day, the only thing that parents should really be assessing and taking a poll of is their connection to their child. So connection and attachment are really the precursors to what that child is going to look like later in life. Not about the grades. It's not about their ability to mop floors. It's not about their ability to follow through with certain things. Those things are definitely important, and we need to teach our kids responsibilities and about contributions and being part of a family and being respectful to others. All of those things happen. All of those things are important. They don't happen if they don't have good connections and attachments. It just doesn't happen. And there's research everywhere that shows that.
I'm guilty of this too. Like, I get so hyper focused on wanting them to have these like good qualities, traits, values, morals, and stuff like that, that I hyper focus on how they're not meeting these goals, that sometimes I forget to look back and be like, oh my gosh, but look really how they are. Like, look at what they're doing and growing. Recently, Rick actually went out of town. I was home with the kids, and this hasn't happened in forever, right? And so he was gone for 2 days, and I kind of was like dreading, like, oh, how am I going to parent them by myself? And I feel fortunate that I don't have to on a regular basis. But, we had some plans of things to do, and he was gone, and all of a sudden, they're kind of like doing things that normally I feel like it's like I have to keep asking them, or I get annoyed or frustrated or whatever. And they're like doing these things, and they're helping out and kind of stepping up in other ways. It's almost like they realize, like, oh, well, dad's gone, we're going to help mom out a little bit more. And like, oh, like, okay, like this is sinking in for them. I realize, like, yes, there are so many times they don't do what I want them to do right now when I want them to do it. But in the whole scheme of things, they are doing the things. They are helpful. They saw mom needed a little extra help, and they stepped up and did that. And we need to see who our kids are and what they're doing, and the good humans, that we are putting into the world, because there's a lot of wonderful kids out there. And so usually there's good parents behind those good kids,
Very, very much. I would say that most of the families that I work with, they come in kind of with this perspective that, like, their families are falling apart, and they quickly realize that it's not that their family is falling apart, it's that their vision of their family is falling apart. And so they this new vision, and we have to go back to the drawing board. And sometimes there's grief in that. Sometimes what we kind of had envisioned for our kids doesn't come true, and we have to just, we have to take our parenting hearts, and we have to say, yeah, that was my vision, and I have to grieve because it just isn't who my child is, and that's okay. Okay for me to grieve that. It's okay for me to have sadness around that. and then to move forward and just love them for who they are. It's always kind of a renegotiation of the terms, whether we're grieving because they're growing up or moving out of the stage, or whether we're grieving because maybe something passes and that we feel like maybe they missed out on something because they chose not to do it. Maybe they choose, a different path, academic wise. Maybe they were really, into playing a sport and now they no longer want to play a sport. And we have to grieve that loss. So yeah, grieving is part of parenting, and that's okay. That's very much okay.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because I don't think that gets talked about enough. I think there's a lot of grief in parenthood and letting go of our expectations and what we thought would be that aren't, and letting ourselves do that, so then we can open ourselves up for the things we never even imagined that we would have in our lives that actually turn out to be maybe even better than what we had thought originally. I'm so happy that you're here today. I love everything you shared with us and your wisdom. And do you have any final thoughts or anything that you would want to share with parents?
I think the other piece is about tribes and having your parenting tribe of people that you can go to that, provide validation, that are not judgmental. And we really need people around us who can just listen to our story, validate what we're going through, and then just, how can I help? And that's a great thing if you can do that for somebody too. How can I help you? And sometimes sometimes they just need to vent. And so I just think it's really important for people to do that. The other piece that we hadn't touched on was, I have some friends who wrote a book. So it's Play to Their Strength by Brandon Miller and Annalyn Miller, and their local parents. And then they wrote a follow-up book called Incredible Parent. Is a coaching system, and I went through their certification and became an incredible coach. And basically what we do is we provide you with you get a code, and then you take a little quiz. You take a quiz for yourself. Your spouse can take a quiz. It's not really a quiz. It's more of a test that sort of identifies your parenting strengths. And it will generate 12 strengths. We call them your strong 6 and your supportive 6. And then you take the quiz or the test for each of your children, and it pops out what your children are and what their strengths are. And then what we generally do is we take those strong strengths and supportive strengths, and then we talk about them, because when we look at that, we can look at ways that parents and their kids are different. They're the same. I use this a lot with spouses. So they each take the test, and then we talk about where they're different, and then it generates a more positive conversation where they can embrace this versus looking at the differences as, oh my gosh, you're always doing this, or you're always doing that, and have a different conversation. And there's much more room for allowing our partners to be who they are. And then one of my, the Bible, I feel like for parenting is definitely Love and Logic. So Love and Logic has been around for years. And I love that one just because it tells you what to say. It tells you exactly what to say when you're really struggling with your kids, and you want to come from this place of shame and blame versus a place of teaching them. So when you say to your child, be careful, or you're going to knock over your glass of milk on the table, and they're messing around and they knock over the milk on the table, rather than saying to them, I can't believe how stupid you are that you did that, I already told you not to do that, of saying to them something different. So something like, wow, I said that probably 3 times for you not to knock over your milk, or to be more careful. And I'm wondering, did you hear me say that, or were you not hearing me? And then talking about what we're going to do about this now, because now we have milk all over the table, and then helping them and empowering them of, well, now It's going to be longer before I'm going to be able to do my video. Now I have to wipe up my milk, and I have to wipe milk off the table, and I have to wipe the floor, and I have to, I have to follow through, and I have to make amends for what I did. And so that's a different conversation. And then afterwards of saying to the following up with the child around, gosh, I was so frustrated when you spilled your milk. Could you see that? You're asking them about the emotion behind it, and then seeing what they say.
Yeah. Oh, that's so great. Those are such wonderful resources. Thank you for sharing them. I'll be sure to post them in the notes. And again, Kimberly, thank you so much for being here with us.
I loved it.
Good. We might have to do a part 2 or meet some other time, because I know you have so much to share. And I would love for you guys to leave a comment of something that you're taking away from today's conversation. Kimberly had a lot of wisdom. And if you are watching this video as a recording on another platform and you are looking for your own tribe and you're looking for connection and support that doesn't come from a shame and blame sort of place, please join our Happy with Baby Facebook community. And until next time, take care of yourself, because it's not if you have time, but it is definitely a necessity. So thank you so much for being here.